back to Nutrition Tips with JLo. Today I'm going to finish up the little macronutrient mini-series with the third and final macronutrient of importance, fat, and another unfairly demonized and misunderstood macronutrient that is so important for general health and for athletic performance as well. And so, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's see what some of the functions are, why you need it, what, kind of a little bit of background and help you understand it a little bit better. So let's get straight into it, jump in. What's the deal with fat? Okay, so first off, again, prioritizing overall health is really critical. It's super important, as I've talked about, to have a foundation of good health in order to be a thriving, functional, happy, performing, strong athlete. And in order to do that, we have to have a really healthy, balanced diet, of course, and fat is a critical piece of that. Even aside from athletic performance, fat is really important for helping to absorb all the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, D, E, and K. It helps make a lot of our hormones like estrogen, testosterone, which are important for growth and development. Fat's a very important piece and component of our cells, the kind of cell membrane. And, it's just a really important fuel source for athletic performance, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so there are a ton of different types and kind of variations of fatty acids, which kind of make up the general term, the general kind of umbrella of fat. Really, the main ones you need to know are unsaturated fats and saturated fats. The unsaturated fats you've probably heard kind of mentioned, polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats. These are found in things like olive oil and olives, nuts and seeds, avocado, fatty fish like salmon, and things like that. And those are the healthy sort of fats that we want to center or have it be a big part of our diet. And also things like omega-3s, which are kind of encapsulated in the polyunsaturated fats. These are essential fatty acids, meaning our body can't actually make them ourselves. We have to get them from food. And omega-3s, obviously another hyped up thing, but they're really important for kind of managing, balancing inflammation, brain health, and there's actually some cool studies and research being done on omega-3s for athletic performance and strength. And so we want to, get a lot of good omega-3s in our diet. Omega-3s found in seafood, in nuts and seeds like flax seeds, walnuts, hemp seeds, chia seeds, things like that. So including those in our diet is really helpful for keeping our omega status nice and good. So the other type of fat to be kind of aware of is saturated fat. You've probably heard of it, and as well as trans fats, I guess. But these are recommended by public health and kind of nutrition expert authorities to limit in our diets just because of their kind of roles and implications in increasing our risk for heart disease, driving up cholesterol, things like that you don't necessarily need to worry too much about now, but just being aware of, having balance and moderation in our diet. And these, saturated and trans fats are found in a lot of processed foods, a lot of animal-based foods, butter and dairy, kind of fatty cuts of meat, as well as other, plant sources like coconut and hydrogenated, kind of fake vegetable oils, things like that, processed foods. So being able to have balance and not overdoing it on those, and instead kind of crowding out those saturated fats with the unsaturated, mono and polyunsaturated fats found in olive oil and pumpkin seeds and salmon and fatty fish, things like that. Those are the ones we want to focus our fat intake on. And so when it comes to athletics and performance, of course, fat is an important fuel source because we have, even in really athletic people, we have a pretty big storage pool of fatty acids to be used as energy, and fat is there's more calories per gram in fat than, say, carbohydrate. So there's a lot of interest in trying to use more fat as a fuel source in exercise, which is true. However, there's, I think, a lot of hype around the keto diet and fat adaptation and burning more fat, and which I think is something, is an interesting question within sports nutrition. But so far, the research and evidence we have doesn't actually show it, increasing our fat adaptation or our fat burning capabilities to actually benefit performance in the long term. Because again, carbohydrates, are a super important fuel source, like I talked about a couple of weeks ago, for a sport like cross country skiing, where performance and race performance is really dictated by speed and power and high intensity efforts, of which carbohydrate is just a much more efficient fuel source. And this is because it actually uses less oxygen to use carbohydrates than it does with fat. And so balance is key. We want to be able to be flexible with our metabolism and use fat when it's most available, and that's kind of at low intensity endurance. Endurance runs, skis, we're using mostly fat as a fuel source when we're going out for an L1 distance run or ski, or a big hike in the mountains. And so we want to be able to use that, but we also want to be able to flip that switch and be able to use carbohydrates as a fuel when we're getting through a super hard interval session or sprinting up a hill in a race or kind of making an attack. Anytime we're breathing super hard, carbohydrate is the preferred fuel, and so we want to be able to switch between those two, and that means we have to include both carbohydrates and fat in our diet. Okay, so the last thing I want to kind of touch on is just this societal fear of fat in sport, but just in kind of even the mainstream, and just how much influence there is from the media, social media, these fad diets, for kind of demonizing fat like we demonize carbohydrates in many ways. And I in a way I get it, because there's so many pressures from society, from culture, social media, and just athletics in general to look or perform a certain way, and we fear fat or carbohydrates is going to be the thing that's going to make us gain weight or become fat. And it's hard, and I get it, and I don't want to dance around and pretend that these issues and problems of disordered eating and body image issues in sport don't exist, because it does. And to a certain extent, I've been there myself back in my day, and it's really prevalent, and it's really hard to sort of navigate. But I think the key is understanding the role that these things play, understanding the science, understanding the kind of concept of balance and fueling properly, eating good quality foods, over the consistency of our diet. There's no such thing as a bad or a good food. There's just good or bad diets, right? It's just the overall kind of balance and consistency of our diet over a long period of time that really matters. And no single food or single nutrient is going to make or break our life or our body or our diet. And so it's just important to keep that in mind. And that, just kind of like I've discussed, the importance of fat in our diet as a nutrient within foods is really important. And so some of the things that I like to include in my diet that are great sources of fat, of course, tons and tons of nuts and seeds, pouring pumpkin seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds on my daily oatmeal. I love tahini, which is like a kind of a nut butter paste made from sesame seeds that you can use in dressings. Avocado, of course, but other great sources like fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, things like that. Great seafood, having a couple eggs, things like this, that just having that balance, including them in the diet. Being aware of, especially for you guys that you're still growing and developing, you need this stuff in your daily diet to kind of help support your immune system, your brain, your athletic development and general health. And so being aware of how to include it in your diet, putting olive oil on your salad, and just having that nice balance and moderation is super important. So it's really all I have to say about fat. It's not that exciting, but it is important to kind of keep in mind and be aware of. And so I hope that this was helpful. I hope this little mini series was helpful to kind of give you a good starting point on some really important pieces of the nutrition puzzle for athletes. So until next time.